Welcome to another episode of Spark the Conversation. This is your host, Mark the Spark, and we're going to get into today's news. So, our first topic today is a couple cabinet picks for the Trump administration have been confirmed, some a little more easily than others. First one, Pete Hegseth, who is going to be the director of the Department of Defense, basically in charge of the Pentagon and all the arms of the armed services. And he was a fairly controversial pick. There were actually three different Republicans. Of course, all the Democratic senators voted against him for various reasons. Some because of false allegations against him, not by his ex-wife, but by a third party who the ex-wife disowned, or disavowed, I should say. So that was kind of strange. And then Collins and Murkowski, and of course you've got our former, not Speaker of the House, but person in charge of the Senate for the Republicans, well, I guess he was the minority leader, right, for the Republicans, Mitch McConnell, who, will talk and then pause and then talk a few minutes later, not realizing he had paused, kind of like we lost him there for a minute. So we never really got anything out of that, of what was causing that, or a diagnosis, or, it seems like it hasn't happened in a while, but kind of strange and concerning. But this is our leading class right now of the elderly in the federal government, basically. And yes, I understand. I also realize that Trump is no spring chicken himself, but at least he acts young. Like, he's still out golfing. He talks intelligently, um, compared to our former octogenarian who was in the White House, who they said was like a nursing home patient, basically, there. And it would be interesting to know who signed all his documents for him. But we've made a big leap forward from there. But the rest of the federal government seems to be full of either old people or young lunatics, at least on the left. But anyways, I digress. So Hegseth had to be voted through with the help of J.D. Vance, the vice president, who makes the tie-breaking vote in this situation. But he's through, and that's a big win. Mitch McConnell said something like he wasn't going to support him because he didn't think he had the experience to run a department so big. But that shall be yet to be seen. He clearly has the on-the-ground experience that is required for him to understand what is necessary to have a strong fighting force, and he's willing to be strong on the guidance that Trump wants and how he wants our military to be run. He is strong on peace through strength, which is Trump's leading foreign policy, which has shown to be working already, which we'll show some examples of that in the future in this episode. And Tulsi Gabbard confirmed as the director of intelligence, the Agency of Intelligence. So that's another good win. Director of National Intelligence is the official title. So another good win there, although, two controversial picks, right? Controversial in air quotes, which is interesting that how they pick to be the ones to be controversial and the ones not. So there you have it. If I look a little tired today, it's because I was up late watching Bill's game, and it was a pretty rough ending, especially with how the officials ruled in some of those calls. So that's why I'm looking a little rough today. That's my excuse anyways. But we got a couple clips. We've got a clip of the swearing in of Pete Hegseth first, and also a couple pieces that I picked out of his speech, which was good and kind of shows us where he's coming from and some of his thoughts on how the Department of Defense is going to run for the next 4 years, or likely the next 4 years, as I don't see any changes coming unless something significant happens. I mean, we all know that Trump is willing to fire people who don't fulfill their promises or live up to their expectations, or at least Donald Trump's expectations of them. But I do not think that that's going to be the case. I think that Pete seems like he is the guy for the job, and he will stand up to the pressure that no doubt will come from the left. So here's those clips.
Put your hand on the Bible, raise your right hand, and repeat after me. I, Pete Hegseth.
I, Pete Hegseth.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
The duties of the office of which I am about to enter.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Secretary. Congratulations. Mr. Secretary, say a few words.
All praise and glory to God. His will be done, and we're grateful to be here. And as I said in my hearing, it was Jesus and Jenny. I would not be here without you, sweetheart. Thank you so much. I want to thank the President of the United States, our Commander-in-Chief, Donald Trump. We could not have a better Commander-in-Chief than him. It is the honor of a lifetime, sir, to serve under you. We look forward to having the backs of our troops and having your back in executing peace through strength, in putting America first, and in rebuilding our military. I want to thank the men and women wearing the uniform. And I've said this before when I speak, and I mean it. Every time I stand at a podium and there's bright lights and cameras, the first thing that goes through my head are the guys that I served with on the battlefield. The men and the women who I lock shields with and put my life on the line with, who never get the spotlight, who never have the cameras, who people don't know what they did in dark and dangerous places. But I know. And at the Pentagon, we're going to remember and we're going to know. The three principles I talked about are what we will bring to that Pentagon. Restore the warrior ethos in everything that we do. Rebuild our military and reestablish deterrence. We don't want to fight wars. We want to deter them, as you said. And we want to end them responsibly. But if we need to fight them, we're going to bring overwhelming and decisive force to close with and destroy the enemy and bring our boys home.
So like I said, looks like a strong pick. He clearly wants to have a strong military again, which is something we ironically haven't talked about for the past 4 years, is wanting to have a strong military and being able to defend our borders and defend our beliefs and be the strongest fighting force, the most lethal fighting force in the world, which is what we need to be if we're going to be the leader of the free world, if we're going to lead the world in, guidance of truth and prosperity and what is good, and be a moral leader for the world. So, as I talked about, Tulsi Gabbard was another confirmation that got through yesterday, or on Friday, or over the weekend. But she is now the Director of National Intelligence. She has experience in this realm, and it's funny because the most controversial picks, some of the most controversial people that they had for these positions were those who were former or current Democrats or independents, but they had left-leaning values, or at least they're moderately left. It's so funny, and I'll talk about this again later, and I may say the same thing, but the left will turn on their own. The craziest thing about the left is that they progress, right? They're always progressing. That's why they're progressives. They can't stop progressing. And if you don't progress with them, you may not have changed. It's like Elon Musk said, I didn't leave the left left me. So and as soon as you say, okay, you guys have gone too far, I don't really believe that much, I'm not that far left, then you're the bad guy and they will turn on you. And then all of a sudden you're worse than the people that were their enemies, like, and you are closer to agreeing with them than their enemies are. But it's funny to see how quickly that changes. I really didn't see any speeches or big production out of her when she was confirmed. But apparently, interesting note about her swearing in is that it happened so quickly that she was trying to get her family Bible to be sworn in on, and she missed her opportunity to get it with J.D. Vance, the vice president. So she ended up going to Clarence Thomas's home, and which I believe is in Chevy Chase, Maryland, and had the swearing in at Clarence Thomas's, who's a Supreme Court justice, the best one in my opinion, and had the swearing in there with her family Bible. So that's good to see. I did find there's a clip from a Turning Point USA event that she spoke at. I believe this was in 2024, and just gives you a little bit of idea who she is and some of her values. So here's that clip.
It's the Democrat elite and the permanent Washington establishment, the war machine made up of both Democrats and Republicans, who are abusing their power, undermining our God-given rights and freedoms enshrined in the Constitution, with one goal and objective in mind: protecting their power at any cost. Now, every member of Congress and the U.S. Senate, they all took an oath. Every time they are elected, they go back and take that oath again. It's the same oath that I took when I was elected to Congress in 2012. It's the same oath that I took when I enlisted in the Army back in 2003. That oath that says I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The sad reality is that many of these very people who raised their right hand and said those words pose a direct domestic threat to the freedom of our country today.
Another cabinet pick who was confirmed today was Scott Bessent, who is going to be the Treasury Secretary. And this is an interesting pick. I believe that this is a pick based on skill and qualifications, which is really what all of the picks are, which seems like it should be a normal thing. But with the DEI that has basically had penetrated and overtaken the Democratic Party in recent years, especially recent years, more than even before, they weren't picking people based on qualifications, which is why we are in shambles right now. It's why our government is run so terribly, or not run at all, and why we have fallen into the dumpster. And our economy's bad, our military's weak. All these issues were caused by the fact that the people running our government, advising the president, if there is such a thing, were unqualified. They weren't picked because they were skilled. They were picked because of their DEI qualifications. We'll put that in air quotes as well. It's because they were gay or black or some kind of minority status. So, you got to get your minority points. So Scott Bessent is an interesting pick, though, I say, because he was a CEO of Key Square, and he really has had no government experience, which isn't so weird for the Trump administration. But in the past, he worked for the Soros Fund Management, which is chaired by George Soros, which is the left-wing billionaire who funds a lot of left-wing campaigns and politicians and judges, especially, is what he seems to focus on the most. So it's kind of a weird pick, but and he's gay, this Scott Bessent. But we're not pointing at that. We're not holding him up as the first gay cabinet member under a Republican president? Because we don't care. That's not important. That's not why he's picked. He's picked to do a job. And like I said, if he doesn't do a good job, Trump has a history of getting rid of people, and he has no trouble doing that. So we'll see. I really don't have an opinion on the guy, because the Scott Bessent, because I don't know him that well. But I think we're going to hear a lot from him very soon because of the economy and the position it is in. Trump said something the other day about wanting to lower interest rates. I'm not sure I agree with him there. I've said all along, I think they're moving too fast in reducing interest rates, and I think that you can see the effect that's had on, the housing market is still struggling, and there's still a lot of debt issues, and the fact that, interest has gone up, inflation has gone back up, and holding that interest rate at the level it is until we start to see it decline, inflation decline, and get closer to that 2% number that we're looking for, the target, would, I believe, be a better policy. So I know Trump wants it lowered because it'll make the economy look better, but you really need to hold out and wait so that we can have a stronger economy long term. And this is going to be his legacy. People aren't going to remember 2 months into his presidency where the economy was. They're going to remember at the end, where am I now? How do I feel? What's my bank account look like? What are the prices at the grocery store? And so I think he needs to kind of bite the bullet right now for that long-term success. But we'll wait to see how this guy does and how he manages pressure from Trump and pressure from the left on handling the economy and the changes to make things work smoothly and prices come down or at least stabilize, and ultimately make it a better economy for everybody. I see some of these posts from these lefties saying, "Oh, it's 24 hours into his presidency and he's not reduced prices yet, like he said." Well, first of all, people say a lot of things, especially politicians. Trump says a lot of things. Like I said before, some of it is joke, some of it is a negotiating tactic, and some of it is throwing things at the wall to see what'll stick. And obviously, like ending the Ukraine war day one or lowering prices day one. Now, he did sign an executive order on day one, telling all his government departments to start looking at ways of reducing costs for consumers. So you can say that that was an action in the direction like he promised, but I don't think anybody seriously thought prices were going to drop day one. That's just kind of a silly thing that he says. Said in I don't know if I want to say in jest or in humor, but it's kind of just leading towards saying it's his main goal to be working on that right from the beginning. So good to see that we are moving in the right direction there. So The View had John Fetterman on yesterday, or it could have even been today. It's hard to tell with these clips, but John Fetterman was on The View, and it's kind of funny because when he was campaigning and before his stroke, he seemed like a pretty far left Democrat, and we were all kind of putting up his videos as an example of how crazy the left was. And now I don't know if it's because of the stroke or just because he's in office now, he's moderating, but none of the other lefties are moderating, so it is kind of strange, especially from a guy in a Carhartt and shorts. He even went to some of these swearing in, maybe even the inauguration. I think he was at Trump's inauguration, a Carhartt hoodie and shorts, and the guy as tall as him, bald head and everything, stands out quite a bit when you're the guy wearing shorts and a Carhartt, but I guess that's just his thing. So he's on The View, and he's kind of laying out some things about Trump's presidency so far and some of these picks and how he's voted on them. So they're trying to call him out on voting for Republican candidates, and he's basically just saying, look, I'm a moderate, and I'm listening to these people, vetting these people, and I vote for the ones who I think are competent, and I vote against the ones I don't think are. Which seems like a pretty a common sense view, which is weird to say about John Fetterman, but he's been a lot more moderate lately. So he's talking about the Trump administration and how they've started the, since he's been sworn in and getting his picks in. And he's like, look, like I've been saying, he's transparent. He's doing what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to strengthen the border. He strengthened the border. He said he was going to deport people. He deported people. He said he was going to pardon January 6th people who were involved in January 6th, and he pardoned them. He says, so, I mean, you really can't complain. I don't necessarily agree with it, but you can't complain about what he's done because he said what he was going to do before he was elected, and now he got elected, and now he's doing it. Makes pretty much just straight common sense. So there's a few different clips, or a couple different clips here, and it's just interesting to see that there actually is common sense on the left, and it's coming from John Fetterman. I mean, from Pennsylvania, that I guess that's where I'd expect it from, but interesting to see. So here's those clips.
Anything you've been seeing, or do you anticipate that there's going to be changes that we should be prepped for that we're not thinking about?
I mean, honestly, I haven't been surprised by anything now. I mean, he's been doing essentially what he actually campaigned on that. He announced he is going to pardon the J6 individuals. He is going to absolutely go after the border. So there's a lot of things that he's already ran on. I mean, criticized a lot of it, and I don't agree with everything either, but it's undeniable he actually ran on that and been really upfront. He's like, I am your reputation, and he's, kind of making those moves. So that's kind of where we're at. Early on, immediately after the election, I was like, hey, we have a choice. We can freak out and follow every other thing around, like a cat, with a laser, after everyone. But I'm not that guy. I'm not going to be that Democrat. For me, there's things I'm going to agree with, I'm going to disagree with, but I'm in the business of finding wins for Pennsylvania and for the nation, and engaging the president. I think I see that as doing my job.
And I mean that the 34-count case in which Donald Trump was found guilty of various financial crimes was politically motivated here in New York?
I found that when the judicial system gets weaponized and targeted political enemies for political gain, I think that's inappropriate, and I think that degrades our collective trust in this a very important institution, whether that's on a Democratic going after a Republican or a Republican going after a Democratic one. And I like to think I call it strikes and balls, because the judicial system has to remain impartial. I mean, that's really the cornerstone of our society.
Talking about your votes, you joined all of your fellow Democrats and 3 Republicans in voting against Pete Hegseth as Defense Secretary. But you were a yes on Kristi Noem, on Marco Rubio, and you've indicated you'll vote in favor of other Trump picks like Elise Stefanik for UN ambassador. You've also taken meetings with some of the most controversial appointees.
Really, all of them. The controversial ones are the non-ones. Yeah.
So the controversial ones are Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. Their hearings are set for later this week. Do you know how you're going to vote yet?
Well, again, it's like we just like all of you are going to watch the hearings and see how things go. And I was committed to having an open dialogue with anyone, and I've played it straight. And that's the same kind of rules that I play, and that's what I extend to them. And I found that to be illuminating, and I was able to develop a more full, informed choice.
So it just seems very common sense kind of stuff from Fetterman. It was very interesting to see the clip about the justice system being weaponized, and that's in reference to being used to go after Trump in the hush money case, which they're still trying to go after him for, out of New York City, which is just lunacy. But, they can't stop these judges. They get on a program and they just can't stop. And they're programmed. That's why they're on a program. But they are loony leftists, and they've been convinced that Trump is bad. It's actually kind of funny because there's a conversation that I had with some other people who volunteer with me in my organization, and it just reminded me how I hate living in New York, because I'm really surrounded by lefties, even people who, I don't always talk politics, but it does tend to come up a lot because politics has to do a lot with culture and life, whether people want to believe it or not. But they were talking about, I can't believe anybody would like Trump. And I was thinking, this isn't really the place. So I kind of just sat there and listened. And I do think it is important to listen to the other side, because especially if you're not trying to inject your opinion in, because then you get their true stance on things. So it's important to hear what they're thinking. And they were talking about, the different policies and whatever, but they're just programmed. They can't really articulate why they hate Trump. They just know that they're supposed to. And so therefore they hate him. It's kind of sad that they're programmed in that way. But like I said, in New York, that's what most of the people you're going to run into, that's the way they think. And so you're not really going to have much opportunity to deal with people that agree with you unless you know who those people are, and you tend to surround yourself with those, which I do, but I also don't avoid people just because they disagree with me. And sometimes I do inject my opinion. A lot of times I do inject my opinion because I don't really keep it to myself very well. But there's a time and place, and usually the organization I volunteer with is not the place. But of course, people on the left don't always follow those rules because they are in New York and they recognize that most people they run into will agree with them. But anyways, it is interesting to see what I would say a common sense Democrat who is willing to have the conversation at least and acknowledge that people are doing what they were voted to do. Like Trump was voted to do what he promised, and he's doing what he promised. And acknowledging the weaponization of the Justice Department, which is one of the things that helped Trump get elected. So it's very interesting. But another thing that we were dealing with is the fires in California. We watched some clips about how he visited North Carolina and California, and some of the stuff about FEMA and him wanting to get rid of FEMA possibly, or to reduce its size or make it, manage more at the state level, which was very interesting. Another clip came out with Karen Bass, who's the LA mayor, and this clip, I think, exemplifies the strength of Donald Trump and his willingness and ability to negotiate, his willingness and ability to call out people to their face when he disagrees with them or he thinks that their policies are terrible. And so this clip is just grade A, chef's kiss, Donald Trump putting somebody in their place and calling them out for their failures and telling them that they need to correct. So here's that clip. Enjoy this one. This is really, really good.
Look at that, actually.
Mr. President.
Look. Mayor, please.
Yes. First of all, let me just take the opportunity to officially welcome you to Los Angeles. Really appreciate you coming, and especially you come just a few days after your inauguration. So
Thank you.
I want you to know that your presence here is very much appreciated. Let me also say that I know you had an opportunity to see the devastation. You've seen the extreme loss, the grief that people are going through here. And we are 100% committed to getting this neighborhood rebuilt again. You mentioned a couple of things in terms of us expediting. So I signed executive directives right away so that we could cut the red tape, we could get people back building as fast as possible, and we're going to continue doing that.
Mayor, the one thing is they
Yes.
are saying they will not be allowed to start for 18 months.
No, that will not be the case.
Okay, I just hope
That
you're
will
right.
not, you can hold me to it.
Because 4 groups said that. and
No.
That would be, they should
No,
be able
that-
to do it. They should be able to start tonight.
That will not be the case. You know, first we have to take care, to make sure that there's not getting rid of the hazardous waste, cleaning things up so that people can start right away. And just like you said, if somebody their house was destroyed and they're going to rebuild essentially the same, maybe a little bit longer, a little bit higher, they really shouldn't have to go through much of a process. So I want you to know that we are expediting that. We absolutely need your help. We need the federal help. You're a
You got
builder.
it, I told you. You will have no permit problem. There will be 0 delay. And as far as I'm concerned, you already have the permits.
And
But
And the resource.
I am more worried because I met at least 8 groups of homeowners, and I'm much more worried about the fact that they said it's 18 months exactly, and they were devastated. They want to start now. They want to start removing things. They're not allowed to do it now. And you mentioned hazardous waste. Well, the hazardous waste. What's hazardous waste? I mean, you're going to have to define that. We're going to go through a whole series of questions on determining what's hazardous.
Nope.
I just think you have to allow the people to go on their site and start the process tonight.
And we will.
Okay, good.
You can come back and check.
So she says you can come back and check. And, it's funny because that even in the conversation, you could see the negotiation of him, how he was pushing it, how it kind of modified her stance, and whether she's telling the truth or not isn't really relevant. But she did change how she talked and understood some of the red tape that these people were running into. And initially she said, he said they should be able to start cleaning up their place tonight. And she says, well, there's hazmat and this and that. And he says, I don't care about that. These people are willing to take care of it all. And then so he keeps pushing. It should start tonight. It should start tonight. And by the end, she says, it will. And you can come and check. So great pushback from President Trump. This is how businessmen make things happen. This is why he's more successful than lifetime politicians, because they're used to the speed of government, which is slow, and he's used to the speed of business, which needs to be fast because it needs to adapt quickly to changes in commerce and business and what is happening on the ground level. It needs to be able to make those changes in order to survive. And government, it will just be there forever. So very, very classic Trump negotiating tactic and pushing to make things happen faster than they would normally have happened at the speed of government, which, like he said, could be years. I mean, these people could wait years to get back in their home. And what do they do until then? And that's kind of his point, too, about getting rid of FEMA or reducing its size, is to push this stuff to the states where at least they can adapt faster than the federal government, who is not as familiar with, each individual state situation. So great move from Trump there, and it's really, really cool to see. Another classic negotiating tactic is this issue out of Colombia. So there were a couple planes that were being sent to Colombia with people who were being deported out of the United States, illegal immigrants who were being repatriated to Colombia. And they weren't allowed to land. So Trump says, well, you're going to have to let them land because this is the deal. And if you don't let them land, there's going to be a cost to pay. So I'll read this tweet from Trump. It says, I was just informed that 2 repatriation flights from the United States with a large number of illegal criminals were not allowed to land in Colombia. This order was given by the Colombia's socialist president, Gustavo Petro, who is already very unpopular amongst his people. This classic Trump talk. Petro's denial of these flights has jeopardized the national security and public safety of the United States, so I have directed my administration to immediately take the following urgent and decisive retaliatory measures. He even says we're coming out to retaliate. Emergency 25% tariffs on all goods coming into the United States. In 1 week, that will be raised. The 25% tariffs will be raised to 50%. A travel ban and immediate visa revocations on the Colombian government officials and its allies and supporters. Visa sanctions on all party members, family members, and supporters of the Colombian government. Enhanced customs border protection inspections of all Colombian nationals and cargo on national security grounds. IEEPA treasury, banking, and financial sanctions to be fully imposed. These measures are just the beginning. We will not allow the Colombian government to violate its legal obligations with regard to the acceptance and return of the criminals they forced into the United States. So that was really, really great. Funny to see how Trump he knows how to, this is negotiation for sure. And there was a response from both the Colombian government and internal from the United States. One of the most prominent, the Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez out of the great New York. She says, to punish Colombia government, Trump is about to make every American pay even more for coffee. Remember, we pay the tariffs, not Colombia. Trump is about making inflation work worse for working class Americans, not better, she said. He's lining the pockets of himself and the billionaire class. Well, I want to address that because I don't understand how tariffs put money in his pocket. First of all, I don't think he sells coffee or has anything to do with it. But he understands how to negotiate. This is the difference. The left, when they put taxes and tariffs into place, it's a fundraising scheme to raise money for their leftist policies that ultimately fail because they're so costly and not effective, not efficient for sure. But he understands that we are the leading economy in the world, and so we have the ability to use tariffs and use our strong economy to negotiate and push our goals further, and he can play ball. He can put things out there like this threat to Colombia, and we will win. Will it cost us more for coffee? Maybe, but it would be at most a week or two of expense before they caved, because their economy would be hammered. They would really be affected way more than us. So he understands that, and so he put this out there and says, look, we got all the hand, we have all the control in this negotiation. We're going to win. We can't get enough winning. And sure enough, AOC should be embarrassed. I don't know if she took this X post down, but President Petro also put this up, and they should be embarrassed because obviously Colombia caved and even offered to use the presidential plane to come and pick these illegal immigrants, their citizens, up from the United States. So above and beyond, Trump, another win for Trump. It just shows his ability to negotiate, his understanding of the economy of the world, of the economies of the United States, the strength of the United States economy. It really, really shows the strength of Donald Trump to a T. I also wanted to mention, while we're on the topic of Donald Trump, that Melania Trump comes out with her first official photograph as the First Lady, and according to the New York Post, says that she's in a power pose. I mean, she's got the Washington Monument behind her in the window, and she's kind of standing in front of a table with her hands on the table in a business suit, and has that look in her eye. And you've seen this look from her a lot lately, where she's just like, she's got that squint, like she's staring through your soul. And I really think, and I've said this before, and I'm going to continue to say it, that Melania Trump is going to play a bigger role, a more prominent role, a more visible public role as First Lady than she did in 2016. And I think that she did make one, maybe a couple speeches during the campaign. There was one prominent one that stuck out to me, and I think maybe that was her lead-in. And I know that she was really upset by the Mar-a-Lago raids, how she felt like her privacy was invaded. And I think that's where that look comes from. I think that's where that look of, you will not win, I will win, comes from. And I think that's where a lot of Donald Trump's drive comes from too, him having to fight the last 4 years. And he kind of has alluded to that. But this look that Melania Trump has come out with is very telling of the role that she is looking to play in this 4 years of their administration. Interesting to see that. In other news, the raids of immigrants continue. And Dr. Phil joined in on this one, which I thought was very interesting. It always surprises me that he's a conservative, because he, is kind of in that Hollywood class. And I find it interesting that he's a conservative altogether. But he actually went out on a raid with Tom Homan, and I have a clip of him kind of interviewing this illegal immigrant that was arrested. He's a criminal who has been charged with sex crimes with minors, and so it's interesting to see that he's getting involved in this administration. I'm not really sure how this came to be or what his role would be, but it is interesting to see him out on this raid and talking to this guy. And basically, this is showing the reality of the people that are being targeted by ICE right now. It's not, if you watch TikTok or any of the short videos right now, you see a lot of teachers, lefty teachers saying, if you come into my school and go after my students, I'm going to defend them. I'll do whatever it takes. Look, that's not happening. Also, there was another clip because they've lifted regulations on ICE not being able to go into churches and schools and some other buildings that was kind of like a safe space or whatever. But there, and it's saying, oh, it's got a chilling effect or whatever. And there was actually an interview of JD Vance that was asking about this, and he gave a great answer. He says it should have a chilling effect. It should have a chilling effect on illegal criminals, dangerous criminals who are here illegally, going in churches, going in schools, and going in places where people are vulnerable. Yes, I want there to be a chilling effect on those people going into those places and affecting our citizens. And that's true. We don't believe the narrative that the left is trying to push, that these people are safe, that they're not criminals, that these are families being targeted. That is not the case, not at this point anyways. Right now the case is go after serious criminals who are here illegally and get them out. And they've been successful so far, and the left is trying to make fear tactics out of it, but so far it's still very popular with the American public. Trump's satisfaction rating, approval rating, is higher than it ever was in his first term, which is setting a record for a second term of a presidency, which I guess has never had a higher satisfaction or approval rating than their first term. And Trump's at his highest yet. So it's really, really great to see. But here's the clip of Dr. Phil and Tom Homan with some ICE. There's a lot of this is edited to blur out the faces of the ICE agents, so that's just how the clip is. But this is a pretty good clip to show who is being deported right now.
Name?
Seda.
Seda what? Do you have a first and last name?
Sam.
Seda Sam?
Yes.
Where are you from?
Where I was born or where I'm from?
Where are you born?
Thailand.
You've been deported before from the United States?
No.
Never been deported?
I've been in the system before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have you been charged with
Charged where?
before?
I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna talk to my lawyer.
Yeah. Are you a citizen?
My mom's a citizen.
Your mother's a citizen?
Yes.
But you're not?
Nope.
But you've never been deported before?
We Dr. Phil. We got Dr. Phil.
Yeah? How do you know me?
No, I seen Dr. Phil, on TV.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is an example of sanctuary cities, right? We got an illegal alien convicted of sex crimes involving children, and he's walking the streets of Chicago. Again, the downfall, the problem with the sanctuary city, that people like us walking the street rather than local law enforcement working with federal agents. This is what we're dealing with. Yeah. You've been charged with sex crimes with children?
Not really.
Not really? And never been deported?
Nope.
Huh. Let's take them in and process them, lock them up.
Got it, sir.
All right.
So in our last news story of today, we have a video out of Catholic Charities of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And this is actually on their webpage, and it is an instructional video to illegal immigrants telling them what they should do if ICE comes to their place of business or, comes after them in any other place. And this is kind of concerning. This is the problem with all these NGOs, these non-government organizations, that they're receiving funding. A lot of this comes from private donors, but they also receive government funding, which is forced taxation, which taxation is theft, and forced taxation to distribute the money to NGOs based on kind of like the government's whim, which is very easy to hide where the money's going when you use these NGOs to do that. So this woman goes on to tell people how to protect themselves, what rights they have, how to avoid ICE, how to avoid deportation, and stuff like that. And this is exactly the reason, one of the reasons why I stopped contributing to Catholic Charities, because I have the option of donating money to where I want, and I'm not going to donate to charities and organizations that don't share my beliefs. And you would think that Catholic Charities would share my beliefs. But I stopped when they were on the border a couple years ago. We had a problem. The problem starting on the border, and they were out there handing out cell phones and different kind of materials. It just seemed like they were going above and beyond just helping the poor and needy and helping illegals, maybe taking away from what they could do for citizens who need their help. And that really bothered me. So that was the time when, even though I think Catholic Charities does a lot of good things, if you're not going to do what I agree with, if you're not going to stick by values that I think you should, you're not going to get my money. That's just how it is. Now, I'd probably get my tax dollars, but the parts that I can control, you're not going to get. So this is a video describing what Catholic Charities' message is right now to illegal immigrants.
Hi, my name's Barb Graham, and I'm an attorney at Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Milwaukee in the Refugee and Immigration Services Program. This is a video about knowing your rights if Immigration and Customs Enforcement approaches you. All people living in the United States, including people who are undocumented, have certain rights under the United States Constitution. If immigration officers, or what we sometimes call Immigration and Customs Enforcement or ICE, come to your workplace, they must have a valid search warrant or the consent of your employer to enter non-public areas. If you are undocumented and immigration officers come to your workplace, be aware of the following. First, do not panic and do not run away. If you are frightened and feel like you need to leave, you can calmly walk toward the exit. If you are stopped, you may ask if you are free to leave. If the officer says no, do not try to exit the building. If you are questioned, you may tell them you want to remain silent. 2. You have the right to remain silent. You do not need to speak to the immigration authorities or answer any questions. If you are asked where you were born or how you entered the United States, you may simply refuse to answer or remain silent. If you choose to remain silent, say so out loud. If they ask you to stand in a group according to your immigration status, you do not have to move, or you can move to an area that is not designated for any particular group. You may show a Know Your Rights card to an officer that explains that you will remain silent and you wish to speak to a lawyer. You may refuse to show identity documents and say what country you are from. Do not, though, show any false documents and do not lie. Third, you have the right to speak to a lawyer. If you are detained or taken into custody, you have the right to immediately contact a lawyer. Even if you do not have a lawyer, you may tell immigration officers that you want to speak to one. If you have a lawyer, you have the right to talk to them. If you have signed a form called a G-28, which shows that you have a lawyer, give it to the officer. If you do not have a lawyer, ask for an immigration officer for a list of pro bono lawyers. You also have the right to contact your consulate. The consulate may be able to assist you in locating a lawyer. You can refuse to sign any or all paperwork until you've had the opportunity to speak to a lawyer. If you choose to sign something without speaking to a lawyer, be sure you understand exactly what the document says and what the document means before you sign it. If you want more information about your rights or to learn you might be eligible for immigration benefits or relief, speak to a reputable immigration lawyer. You can go to the American Immigration Lawyers Association to connect with a lawyer in your area.
So I think that's kind of concerning that kind of stuff is being done by our NGOs. that are being funded by our government tax dollars and also by charities. Catholic churches are regularly trying to uh, raise money for Catholic Charities, as it is the organization associated with the church. And I think the campaign's probably going to be starting. I think it usually is in the spring when they start the drive for Catholic Charities. And their funding goes up, and they hit their targets pretty much every year. I don't know if they have missed one lately, but it would be interesting to see if this kind of stuff gets a focus on it, if they start to miss their mark. And that's the kind of thing that needs to happen before they change course. Organizations like this continue on a course until they hit a wall, until they get pushback, until they realize that it's hurting them, and then it's not popular. Sometimes organizations like this, they have so many people that agree in the organization, like a lot of institutions, that they don't realize it's an echo chamber, right? And they don't realize that they're in the minority and they're actually not doing what their supporters want them to do. I think the Pope's kind of like that too. There was actually a part of that interview with J.D. Vance was discussing the Pope and the cardinals and asking him about their stance on the border, because the Pope has come out against the deportation efforts of the Trump administration, saying that it's not humane. Apparently, we're just supposed to take care of the whole world, whoever shows up on our doorsteps, whether it harms us or not. And again, they're under the disinformation that the people showing up on our borders are good people just looking for help. And while that may be the case for some, we don't know because they're not vetted and we don't know who these people are or where they are. But a lot of them have been shown to be dangerous criminals, and they need to be removed. And so for the Pope, to say that we should be taking these people and keeping these people who are dangerous to our citizens and dangerous to other immigrants as well, especially those coming here legally and going through the strenuous work to become full citizens, or at least be here legally, to say that we need to keep those dangerous individuals is actually really, really evil. And the Pope has the biggest wall around the Vatican that there is. He has the most security. I don't see him helping these people. I see him protected in a glass box, literally, with walls bigger than any, beautiful, big, beautiful walls, as Trump would say. Maybe not as beautiful as ours, at least when they're done. But no, they're probably made out of marble. I think everything in the Vatican is made out of marble. But still, for the Pope to come out and say that and judge our country and what we do when he's doing the same thing or worse, this Pope, I don't know. Something has got to change. He needs a wake-up call, or he's got to go, because he is destroying the church. I'm sorry. That's my opinion. I do not follow what the Pope says. I know a lot of Catholics who do not follow what the Pope says, because he, since the beginning, has been a far left-leaning Pope. And I think that it's time that he move on or step aside, because he has not been a good motivator for the Catholic Church. He has not been a good spokesperson for the Catholic Church. And I don't think he is a good spokesperson for Catholic values. I do not think that. I'm sorry, but anyways, so those are the news stories for today. Thanks for joining me. I hope you take the time to leave a comment and follow and share with a friend if you enjoyed. Now, don't forget to go out and volunteer for something meaningful and spark the conversation.